Anger is a flood that drowns the unprepared man in a torrent of his own chaotic emotion. It is a fire that consumes the house it was meant to warm, leaving behind only the ash of regret. For most, this feeling is a moment of total weakness, a surrender of their highest faculties to their basest instincts. But for the man who walks a different path, for the man who understands the architecture of his own soul, anger is something else entirely. It is a signal, a catalyst, and a tool of immense and terrible power. Welcome, gentlemen, to the Sigma male community. Today we are not here to discuss the suppression of anger, for that is the method of the fearful. Instead, we will dissect the unusual, strategic, and profoundly effective reactions of a truly irritated Sigma male. A man who does not get mad but gets still, gets quiet, and gets to work. This is not about controlling a storm. It is about becoming the calm, calculating eye at its very center, wielding the wind and the lightning for your own sovereign purpose. The journey into the mind of an irritated Sigma begins with understanding the absolute nature of his boundaries. When these lines are crossed, especially by a calculated act of betrayal or profound disrespect, the response is unlike anything the average person expects. It is not an explosion but a complete and total implosion, a vanishing act so thorough it rewrites reality itself. 1. The Event Horizon Erasure, Black Hole Method. When a foundational trust is irrevocably shattered, the Sigma male does not engage in the common theatrics of confrontation or the passive aggression of ghosting. He enacts a far more profound and permanent solution, the Event Horizon Erasure. This is not born of fleeting emotion but of a cold, rational decision to preserve the integrity of his inner world. Imagine a black hole's event horizon, the point of no return. Once you cross it, you do not simply disappear. For all intents and purposes, you cease to have ever existed in his universe. Every shared memory, every past interaction, every emotional connection is not just suppressed, it is methodically de-indexed and archived into oblivion. The process is a surgical excision of a toxic element, a deep psychological cleanse that restores equilibrium and purifies his mental space from the contamination of betrayal. This chilling indifference is the ultimate expression of self-preservation. It is the understanding that certain poisons have no antidote and must be purged entirely. The target of this erasure will find themselves met not with anger or sadness, but with the flat, emotionless void of non-existence. They become a stranger he has never met, a ghost whose name carries no weight. There is no dramatic monologue, no final salvo of accusations. There is only the deafening silence of a vacuum where a person used to be. This is not a punishment meted out in anger, but a logical consequence, a final, non-negotiable decree from a man who is the sole gatekeeper of his own reality and who has deemed your presence within it to be a critical threat to its stability. 2. The Architect of Indirect Influence. Direct confrontation is a tool of limited utility, a blunt instrument for a man who prefers the elegance and precision of a scalpel. When provoked, the irritated Sigma often eschews the head-on collision in favor of becoming an architect of circumstance, a shadow strategist operating from the periphery. He understands that true power lies not in shouting demands, but in subtly reshaping the environment so that the desired outcome becomes the natural, inevitable conclusion. He observes the intricate web of relationships, motivations, and insecurities around him, identifying the hidden levers and pulleys that control the dynamics of the situation. Instead of forcing a door open, he finds the key, or more often, subtly guides someone else to unlock it for him, believing it was their own idea all along. This mastery of indirect influence is a form of high-level social chess. The Sigma male will plant seeds of thought, carefully frame narratives, and manipulate the flow of information with an unseen hand. His actions are so nuanced, so deeply embedded within the natural course of events, that their origin is almost impossible to trace back to him. He orchestrates resolutions that perfectly align with his will, yet leave no fingerprints. This approach is not born from a fear of conflict, but from a stoic understanding of efficiency and the conservation of energy. Why engage in a draining, unpredictable brawl when you can recalibrate the system to produce a superior result with minimal expenditure? It is the ultimate expression of strategic thinking, proving that the quietest man in the room is often the one moving all the pieces on the board. 3. The Forge of Transmutation. For the common man, a surge of anger is a destructive wave to be weathered or unleashed foolishly. For the Sigma, it is raw, potent energy, a molten or to be shoveled into the crucible of his personal forge. He does not suppress the feeling. He channels it, transforming its chaotic heat into focused, productive power. This is the art of alchemical transmutation, turning the lead of raw frustration into the gold of tangible progress. The intense energy that would otherwise curdle into resentment or manifest as a destructive outburst is instead redirected with disciplined intent. That sharp sting of injustice becomes the fuel for an extra hour of relentless work on his business, the driving force behind a new personal record in the gym, or the creative spark for a groundbreaking project. This process is a cornerstone of the self-mastering mindset, a practical application of turning obstacles into opportunities. The Sigma intuitively understands that emotion is energy, and energy is a resource that must never be wasted. He allows the heat of his irritation to sharpen his focus, heighten his discipline, and accelerate his mission. He builds with the very stones that were thrown at him. When you see a Sigma suddenly become intensely productive, obsessively focused, or ruthlessly efficient, it is often because someone, somewhere, has made the grave mistake of provoking him. They lit a fire, expecting it to burn him down, not realizing they were merely stoking the very forge that makes his blade sharper, his resolve harder, and his victory more certain. For the deep dive interrogation. An offensive act against a Sigma male does not trigger a blind, emotional reaction. Instead, it activates a state of hypervigilant analysis, turning his mind into a sterile, soundproof interrogation room. The immediate emotional sting is acknowledged and then set aside, replaced by the cold, dispassionate logic of a forensic investigator. He puts the situation and every person involved under a microscope. Motives are dissected with surgical precision. Past conversations and behaviors are meticulously re-examined for previously missed patterns, inconsistencies, and tells. He suspends all trust and initiates a full-scale intelligence-gathering operation, mapping out the hidden agendas, potential gains, and underlying vulnerabilities of everyone connected to the event. This is not paranoia, it is advanced situational awareness and threat assessment. He is building a comprehensive psychological and strategic map of the battlefield before he makes a single move. He seeks to understand the why behind the offense with an almost academic rigor, because in the why lies the key to the most effective and permanent solution. This deep dive allows him to move beyond the surface-level insult and grasp the core mechanics of the conflict. By the time he concludes his internal interrogation, he has a complete picture, a detailed dossier on his adversary's character, intentions, and weaknesses. This ensures that when he finally chooses to act, his response will not be a clumsy retaliation, but a calculated, precise maneuver based on a profound understanding of the entire system at play. 5. The contemplative abyss, thoughtful silence. In a world that equates noise with action, the Sigma's most potent initial response to being irritated is often a profound and unnerving silence. This is not the empty silence of submission or confusion. It is the deep, active silence of the abyss, a deliberate withdrawal into a space of intense mental processing. While others are shouting, posturing, and escalating, the Sigma has already disengaged from the external chaos and descended into the depths of his own mind. He is creating a necessary vacuum, clearing out the emotional static and the pressure to react immediately, so that he can analyze the situation with pristine clarity. In this contemplative abyss, he is free to weigh every possible option, trace every potential consequence, and engineer the optimal strategy without external influence. This period of thoughtful silence is a pressure cooker for strategy. It is where he detaches from his own ego, examining the offense not as a personal attack, but as a strategic problem to be solved. He may appear passive or disengaged to the outside observer, but internally, his mind is operating at maximum capacity. He is running simulations, calculating risks, and aligning his potential responses with his long-term objectives. This deliberate pause ensures that when he does finally break his silence, his words will be like carefully aimed projectiles, and his actions will be decisive, impactful, and devastatingly effective. He does not react in the heat of the moment. He responds from the cold, quiet depths of his deliberate contemplation. You watching this, whether you resonate deeply with the Sigma archetype or are fascinated by its contours, understand the critical juncture anger represents. It's not about suppression or explosion, it's about calibration. That white-hot surge. It's data. It's energy. The question isn't, how do I make this stop? But, how do I weaponize this for my trajectory? Right now, in this moment, Recognize that the mastery you seek lies not in denying the storm, but in harnessing its lightning. The next moves define the path. 6. The sovereign strategic withdrawal. When a situation becomes untenably toxic or emotionally charged, the Sigma male does not flee in defeat. He executes a sovereign strategic withdrawal. This is not a retreat born of fear, but a tactical maneuver designed to recalibrate his own state and seize a superior strategic position. He deliberately creates a physical and psychological buffer zone, a self-imposed exile where the noise of the conflict cannot penetrate. This is his opportunity to reboot his internal systems. Away from the fray, the initial heat of his anger is allowed to cool, transforming into the cold, hard steel of resolve. His perspective broadens, allowing him to see the entire chessboard once more, not just the piece immediately threatening him. In this sanctuary of solitude, he reassesses his objectives with icy clarity, free from the distorting influence of other people's emotions and expectations. This withdrawal is a powerful statement of self-sovereignty. He refuses to allow a chaotic environment to dictate his mental state. When he chooses to re-engage, he does so on his own terms. He rarely returns to the original point of conflict. Instead, he reappears on a different flank, armed with a new, often unexpected strategy that bypasses the initial confrontation entirely. He has used his withdrawal not to hide, but to gain a higher ground, achieving his ultimate ends through superior insight and positioning, leaving his provocateur fighting a battle that no longer exists. 7. The inner Colossus under lock and key. Deep within the calm and controlled exterior of every Sigma male resides a titan of focused will and immense latent power. This is his inner Colossus, the engine of his relentless ambition and the source of his unshakable resilience. This colossal energy is what fuels his independence, his discipline, and his creative endeavors. It is contained, not suppressed, behind heavily reinforced locks forged through years of self-mastery and stoic practice. Everyday irritations and minor annoyances are nothing more than faint tremors against these gates. But when his core principles are violated, when his safety or the sanctity of his mission is fundamentally threatened, the locks are tested in a way they rarely are. Should those boundaries be transgressed with sufficient force and malice, the locks do not just break, they are deliberately disengaged. The power that emerges is not the chaotic, flailing rage of an ordinary man. It is the terrifying, focused, and overwhelming force of the Colossus unleashed. It is a force of nature, directed with singular, calculated purpose to neutralize the threat and restore order. This is the part of the Sigma that very few will ever see because its emergence signifies a catastrophic failure on the part of another. To witness it is to understand the profound difference between a man who is merely quiet and a man who is holding a titan in reserve, a silent guardian of his own sovereign world. 8. The Philosopher's Resilience Crucible. For the Sigma, a significant provocation is not just an emotional event, it is an intellectual and philosophical challenge. It becomes a gateway to forging deeper, more profound resilience. He retreats not just physically, but into the vast realm of his own mind, engaging with the great frameworks of human thought. This is where he uses Stoicism, existentialism, and Machiavellian ethics not as abstract theories, but as practical tools. He seeks to contextualize his personal anger within the grand, often indifferent tapestry of existence. This is the Philosopher's Resilience Crucible, where raw emotion is subjected to the intense heat of dispassionate contemplation and transmuted into unshakable strength. He asks the critical questions that lead to wisdom. What does this person's action reveal about the predictable frailties of human nature? How does this event fit into the larger pattern of my life? How can I use the principles of acceptance and rational analysis to turn this perceived injury into a foundation for greater resilience? These are not questions of passive surrender, but of empowered redirection. The Sigma male understands that life does not owe him fairness, nor do others owe him integrity. He interprets betrayal not as a personal flaw, but as a cosmic test of fortitude, a necessary trial by fire through which his emotional armor is reforged. By mentally placing his suffering within a broader existential context, he strips it of its sting and converts it into strength. What was meant to destabilize him instead becomes the catalyst for even deeper philosophical clarity. This is a process of internal alchemy, turning pain into perception and anger into enlightenment. The Sigma draws inspiration from the Stoics who taught that everything lies within one's control except for external events. He sees every provocation as a mirror reflecting back areas of his mind still vulnerable to external influence, and thus worthy of reinforcement. Through this lens, every offense becomes an opportunity for mastery. His irritation evolves into insight, his silence becomes meditation, and his ultimate retaliation is not an act of vengeance, but the proof of his unshakable inner order. This crucible does not just burn away weakness, it leaves behind the glowing embers of a mind tempered by philosophy and fortified against chaos. 9. The disruption without warning. When a Sigma male finally chooses to act on his irritation, it is often with a sudden, devastating precision that leaves his adversaries stunned. He does not give warnings, does not show signs of building tension. To the outside world all seems calm until it isn't. This is the disruption without warning, a calculated strike that has been in the making since the moment of offense. While others are busy venting and reacting impulsively, the Sigma has been building his arsenal in silence, collecting psychological intel, crafting the perfect response, and waiting for the exact moment when impact will be maximal and resistance minimal. When he strikes, it is often surgical. A carefully timed email, a legal maneuver, a strategic alliance that cuts out the offender entirely. His response is always proportionate but never predictable. It is not driven by emotion but by calculation. To be on the receiving end of this reaction is to realize too late that the Sigma was never idle, never passive, only preparing. His goal is not revenge but resolution with finality. There are no second chances, no drawn-out dramas. Just a clean break, a recalibration of reality, and the unapologetic enforcement of his personal code. It is this unpredictability that makes the Sigma so formidable, because once you've crossed him, you will never see the retaliation coming until it is already done. 10. The Shadow Legacy Response. Most people's anger fades with time. They vent, they move on, they forget. But not the Sigma. His memory is long not because he holds grudges, but because he understands patterns. When provoked, he may not respond immediately. He may even let the conflict dissolve publicly. But in the background he is crafting what can only be described as a shadow legacy response. This is a long-term chess master's reaction, a redirection of his trajectory that ensures the one who wronged him never benefits from his presence again, and potentially never recovers from the ripple effects of his withdrawal. This is not sabotage. This is self-determined legacy shaping. The Sigma ensures that his name, influence, and contribution are withdrawn from every space tainted by betrayal. He reroutes his support, his alliances, his collaborations, cutting off oxygen to anything that once fed off his strength. The absence of the Sigma becomes louder than his presence. Former allies feel the cold shift of his departure. Systems that once relied on his silent contributions begin to falter. And in his place, he leaves not destruction, but the haunting realization of what they lost, permanently. This form of revenge is elegant, clean, and irreversible. The Sigma leaves nothing behind, not even a shadow for others to cling to. 11. The Coldfire Manifestation. There is a rare but legendary state the Sigma male may enter when deeply provoked. Something beyond silence, beyond withdrawal, beyond analysis. It is a transformation known as the Coldfire Manifestation. Here, the Sigma becomes hyper-efficient, emotionally untouchable, and strategically aggressive. His presence sharpens, his communication becomes surgically concise, and his decision-making enters a state of heightened dominance. The anger that might cripple others becomes a kind of icy flame in him, burning away hesitation, fatigue, and even doubt. This is the mode where Sigmas build empires, launch impossible projects, and execute life-altering changes. He doesn't rant or argue, he builds. He doesn't retaliate, he conquers. Every ounce of negative energy becomes fuel for productivity, and the provocateur becomes irrelevant noise in the background of his rising dominance. Those who triggered this mode may eventually come to regret it, not because he punished them directly, but because their existence becomes the historical footnote in the epic chapter of his most legendary ascent. Coldfire is not about rage, it is about rebirth. And for the Sigma, it signals a new era, one powered not in spite of the anger but because of it. Anger, in the hands of the undisciplined, is a weapon that wounds its wielder. But in the hands of the Sigma male, it becomes a forge, a laboratory, a silent war room. He does not explode. He does not beg for understanding. He does not chase apologies or announce his pain. Instead, he calibrates. recalculates, transforms. Every insult is recorded. Every betrayal is converted into motion. And while others scream in frustration or spiral into chaos, the Sigma male moves in total silence, cold, calm, calculating. His silence is not weakness, it is the sound of strategy. His stillness is not fear, it is the calm before the surgical strike. He understands what few dare to believe. Anger is not the problem. Misuses. You see, power doesn't lie in being unbothered. It lies in being so profoundly aware of your emotional machinery that no one can pull your levers but you. The Sigma male doesn't deny his fury. He builds frameworks around it. He becomes its master architect. And when he acts once with precision so final, it alters the dynamic forever. So if you are watching this and you've ever been underestimated, ever had your loyalty betrayed, ever felt the fire rising in your chest with nowhere safe to pour it, don't suppress it. Don't explode. Don't self-destruct. Become sovereign over it. Become strategy wrapped in silence. Become the storm that doesn't announce itself, but changes everything when it moves. This is your reminder. This is your recalibration moment. And this is the Sigma male community, a place not for the loud, not for the lost, but for the few who choose depth over noise, purpose over performance, sovereignty over submission. You are not like them. You were never meant to be. If this message resonated, if something inside you just woke up and refused to go back to sleep, then welcome to the Sigma male community. The quiet ones just declared war. Control your fire and you control your fate. Sigma male community.